People always come into my videos and they're like, oh my god, this video is gonna cost me so much money now that I've watched it. Like, I'm gonna spend so much money on all these things that Diana's recommending. Listen, no one has it worse than me, dude. Do you have any idea? I have so many goddamn games in this place that I have run out of space to put them. You know what I can do? I can either put up more shelves or I can move. I'm out of room. This is too much. And I'm about to make it your problem too. Hello and welcome back to the channel. I know I usually talk about tabletop RPGs in the sense of like D&D and indie games, you know, anything made by Free League is top of the charts, and then supplements for those games so you guys can unlock even more content and find out new ways to torture your party. Here's the thing, you can't talk about tabletop RPGs without also talking about tabletop games in general. I mean, every time I go to a convention, I come home with like maybe 2 or 3 books that have to do with D&D and other like improvised role-playing games like that, and then like hundreds of dollars worth of games like Gloomhaven that I then have to figure out how to schlep home. And so I figured I may as well start sharing with you guys some of my favorite board games, including ones that are a little bit off the radar, some more indie stuff, things that are good for families, things that are good for like more horrifying games. Dude, up until I started this career, I didn't even know that board games could be scary, but there's some scary shit out there. Games that you can take with you anywhere and that have become my personal favorites to carry around, either to conventions or to like parties with friends, anything like that. I got a game for every situation, and I'm gonna give you a walkthrough of some of my favorites right now. First up is Get Baked, which is actually fully family friendly and amazingly adorable. The team also gave me this cute little Nomnosaur plushie, which I'll show off a little bit more about that in a sec. But the game is fully family friendly, and there's 2 different ways to play it. There's the grown-up version and the kids version. And the grown-up version isn't really grown-up. It's like 12 and over, really. And then the kids version is 7 and over. There's only slight rule variations, so we're gonna start by learning the grown-up version, and then from there, if you want to check out the kids version for yourself, feel free to check out the game. But for the grown-up rules, all the rules are condensed into this cute little brochure, and basically everything in the game is 2-sided. One side has the grown-up stuff, one side has the kids stuff, so it's easy to switch modes. The game components are really simple, and none are a choking hazard, which is great for kids. Of course, we have a first player token and 2 sets of recipe cards, easy and hard. The grocery deck is where you'll get all your ingredients in order to build out some dough for a cookie. Now, there's not just ingredients in here, there's also event cards and take that cards, so I'll teach you how all those work later. The pantry deck is full of a bunch of ingredients that everyone gets access to, including basic dough, butter, sugar, and vanilla extract. It's kind of like your basic staple ingredient. You also have help cards, which are double-sided. One side has all the rules for the grown-up game, one has the rules for the kids side of the game, and then this last Cookie Brigade card teaches you all of the recipes that you see in the game for real life, in case you want to make the cookies for yourself. Now, all of these playmats have 2 sides. There's a grown-up setup of the pantry and the grocery store and where the recipes go. Then there's the oven, and then the finished cookie trays, which is where the completed cookies go. Kid side only has 6, but the adult side has 13, with the 13th one being on the oven here. Now you're gonna go ahead and place all the recipes down in the appropriate spots, first grandmoms, and then momnosaurs. Just be aware that if there are any cats nearby, they might destroy your setup, so don't give them any cookies for it. After that, you're gonna put the grocery deck down, and then you're gonna draw 5 grocery cards to start with. Now, as you move through the game, these are gonna be the pool of ingredients that you can add to your potential collection to be able to make recipes from, and the entire thing shifts right to left and is constantly replenished, so there's always new things to add. Next is the pantry deck, which is full of staples, which are like really low-tier basic ingredients like basic dough, butter, white sugar, and vanilla extract, and these are just more reliable forms of groceries that we can reach for at any time if we need to. And now to start the game, everyone's gonna grab 1 of each of the staple ingredients, 1 momnosaur recipe, and 1 grandmom's recipe. Now at the start of every turn, you get to do 3 things, and there's a whole list of options to choose from. The first one is picking up a new staple ingredient and adding it to your hand. You can also pick up a new grocery card, and you can pick from any of the face-up ones, but if you choose the leftmost one, then you get a free grocery card from the top of the deck as well. You can also take a new recipe, either momnosaurs or grandnoms. Again, momnosaurs are easier, grandnoms is harder, or you can start playing cards in order to build out your cookie dough. Now, the dough doesn't really have to be made of anything in particular. You don't have to follow a recipe if you don't want to, but you want to put down at least a couple different ingredients and mush them all together to create kind of a stack of cards, which will be the dough that you eventually bake into a cookie. Now, each of the cookies are worth points depending on what ingredients go into them. You'll see these point values along the sides of the cards. For example, butter is -1, the honey is +2, and since these stacks all start face up with the yellow side on the top, that's going to be their starting value when they're raw. Now, what you can do later on as an action is put these doughs into the oven and mark them with a number stating which player they belong to. And then as the turns progress and as the game goes on, they slowly rotate clockwise, which then changes their point values for the entire stack. The longer you keep the cookie in the oven, the more its point values change, but you're gonna wanna make sure not to keep it in too long or else it burns and then loses you points instead. That's why ingredients like butter are interesting, because they start off with a negative point value, but they get better and better as they cook. Now, the last thing you can do on your turn is take one of your cookies from the oven and put it onto a finished cookie dish, which will get you points at the end of the game. Don't forget to mark it with your player number so you don't lose track of whose it is. And also, don't forget you have recipes you can follow. If you happen to create a cookie that follows a recipe, put that recipe card on top of the cookie stack, and that way you'll get some extra points later on. Now there are a bunch of other fun cards in the grocery stack, for example, event cards, which can impact the game as you go. Take that cards, which you can play on top of other people's finished cookies to deduct points from their total, and then plenty of other event cards, which you will just toss into a discard pile once they're used. That's really all you need to know for the game. It's really simple and really fun. Just for reference, here is Farah, my new kitten, next to the Nomnosaur. As you can tell, she absolutely loves it and cuddled up to it instantly. Next up is Riftblade, which is honestly really underloved. I really wish this game would get more attention, but I think Riftbound came out at the same time and might have hurt sales a little bit. I just want to preface by saying I have an alpha, early access version, so your version might look different, but here's the board. And this game is all about two mages engaging in a battle and comboing a bunch of different elemental spells together for devastating effects. My version came with a cloth dice tray, which comes very much in handy because the main power of this game comes from rolling dice. You'll see they have all these different symbols on them, all of which do different things that we'll learn about throughout the game, and we have these help cards, of course. There's also these mana tokens that we'll use to keep track of our resources, and from there, the main mechanic of this game deals with cards. These cards represent all the different spells that you have at your disposal, and throughout the game, you'll actually build your own deck of spells, adding to it as you go. You start off with 4 basics: Void Storm, Lunar Infusion, Thunderclap, and then Cinder Blast. And everyone gets 2 copies of these in their starting deck to begin with. Go ahead and set aside that starting deck, draw 4 cards, and that'll be your opening hand for later. Then the rest of the cards in the game go into the section called the Rift. Then we'll draw the top 4 and set them out for everyone to see, which is where we'll be able to pull our spells from as the game continues. Everyone gets a health dial, which is going to start at 40 points, and then you're ready to start the game. The first player is going to go ahead and roll a number of dice known as Rift Stones. The yellow ones are wild cards, the blue ones power spells, and the purple ones will give you mana. Now we need to decide what spell we want to start our turn with, and one thing to note are the 2 symbols in the upper corner of the card. These are the spell's aspects, almost like they're elements that are used to cast them, and you do need to have at least one shared element between the last spell and the next spell in order to combo. You'll also notice that the spells all have different rarities, denoted by the pips in the upper right corner, and they have various activated abilities depending on how much power you want to put into them as you cast them. For example, Cinder Blast here just has one option where we can empower it using 1 blue Riftstone, which we have down here, so we can spend it like currency, but other spells will have either a free cost or an overcharge cost, all of which comes from what you rolled when you initially rolled dice at the top of your turn. Basically, whatever you rolled on those Riftstones are going to be what you have to spend on your cards for your turn, so if we use the overcharge cost of Hellfire Surge, for example, by spending one of these overcharged Riftstones, then not only do we deal damage to our opponent like normal, but we also get extra damage based on however many other spells we have in our spell combo that are fire-based. Wild Surge is another good example. If we overcharge this spell, we deal a damage, and we also get to draw 2 cards, which can be added to our spells for next round. This is the heart of this deck building game, so you're going to want to be careful about how and how strong you're casting these spells. We're going to start off on this example with Void Storm, and we're going to cast it at its normal strength to deal 1 damage to the opponent. Now, in order to add on to our combo, we need to place down a card that has a matching magic aspect, which in this case is going to be Fracture, onto the next step of the combination. Now, Fracture has 2 different ways to resolve it. The free way lets me draw a card, so I'll go ahead and do that, which gets me Manic Fate. Now, since this has a matching aspect with Fracture, I can actually play it right away, and I actually want to spend one of my Power Stones in order to go with the stronger option to resolve it. Now, the stronger option, the Overcharge ability, lets me not only draw a card, which is going to be this Essence Drain, which I'm then just going to toss into my hand here, but I also get to deal 2 damage to my opponent, and I think that's where I'm going to end my combo here. I don't have any further spells that can chain off of it, but I do have these Rift Stones left, and they all have their own abilities. Those specific rules go beyond the scope of this video, but I will say as a deck builder, this game is amazing. You discard your cards every turn, you draw new ones, you build out your spells to be even bigger and stronger, and it's so much fun. Next up is Aegis, the combining robot battle game, and as you can see, Viren has stopped helping me here. But Aegis is super fun, and it actually has a solo expansion as well, but I won't really get into that in this video. I'm just going to talk about the core game, which is multiplayer. This game is all about commanding Voltron-style robots in a giant arena fight against other players. Now, the actual field guide has all the lore and everything, but the basics are that the 5 different classes of robots all have their own specialties, and they can combine in different ways. Once you've chosen which arena you want to play on and set it down on the table, you can go ahead and choose who you want to command your team. There's a bunch of different people to choose from, but you don't have to do it randomly. The base game actually comes with these helpful cards that have a bunch of different options for pre-built teams that they recommend for different game types, so that way you can build off of a preset set of robots. Now, I went ahead and decided to play with Ingdrix against Ganith, and in this game, all of the robots are represented by little cardboard standees. So I pulled out the corresponding ones that were indicated on the card from my box, and then I put them onto their little stands, and then I set them behind these starting areas on the board. Now, we're only going to do this for the basic robots. All the combined ones ones we're going to make during the game, so we'll set those aside for now and not touch them. There are also cards corresponding to each robot, which you're going to want to pull out and set off to the side. And then once you determine who goes first, the starting player is going to set out the robots on whichever of their start sections that they want. Then they pass to the other player to do the same, kind of strategically, and then we'll start off by calculating how much energy we begin our turn with. This is calculated by adding up the green symbols at the top of our active robot's cards every turn. For Kenneth, this means that he gets 19 energy at the start of his turns while these robots are out, so we'll indicate that on his playmat using these little green tokens. As mentioned before, all the robots have their own cards, and we'll kind of go over the anatomy of them real fast. This symbol up in the corner says what class of robot it is and what faction it belongs to. Its movement is up at the top, its energy is in the corner. We also have its name and number, which is how you tell it apart from other robots, especially ones in its class. It has its ability and integrity at the bottom, and then up in the middle are its abilities and attacks. Now, there are a lot of symbols here, and I won't go into the specifics of what all these symbols mean, but they are in the booklet, so that way you know how to handle every attack as it happens. Most robots can just walk around, but some of them have a little symbol around their movement speed, which means that they can actually fly. Now, on our turn, both movements and attacks cost energy, and we're going to demonstrate the corrosive grenade attack by spending 2 energy and then rolling 2 dice to see what happens. You always roll the amount of dice that you spent in energy for an attack. In this particular case, we actually needed all of our dice to roll above a 3, which didn't happen. Again, these symbols get pretty specific, so you're going to want to check the rulebook to see how every attack works and how defending robots can protect themselves using their abilities. Then you're going to move on, choose the next robot, do all your movements and attacks accordingly, and just move through your entire team. And once you're done, it's your opponent's turn to respond by moving around, attacking, and so on and so forth. Obviously, the big draw of this game is also combining robots, which you can do whenever your robots are next to each other. To do this, check on the card of the robot that you want to create and see what its requirements are. For Aeneid 2000, we need just an Aeneid robot and then any G-class robot. And so since we have these two next to each other on the battlefield, I'm going to spend the indicated 5 energy in order to combine them together. And to do this, I just remove the old 2 robots off of the battlefield and replace them with 1 standee that represents the new upgraded robot. Then for the cards, I'll take the upgraded robot card and put it on top of a stack of the 2 previous robots, so that way I keep track of what's going where. And then the new robot comes in swinging because anything that's marked as a combine ability on its card immediately triggers, so that means I can attack as soon as it hits the battlefield. Again, there's a lot of factors that go into how different attacks and defenses work. There's different attack patterns, all sorts of fun stuff. So if you like that sort of strategy and robots, definitely check it out for yourself. It's a great game. Next up is Nexus Infernum, which is not only a gorgeous game, but it comes from Archon Games, who have like the most pretty, like aesthetically pleasing, amazing, culty vibe type games in existence. And in it, you and your friends play as necromancers trying to summon minions and make deals with demons in order to become the most powerful of them all. It is a bit of a simple game, I will say. It doesn't have a ton of strategy to it, that is. That being said, if you like simple games, this is 100% for you. You start off by dividing all of these demon cards into different stacks based on the number on the back of them. So there's going to be a stack of cards that say 1, a stack of 2nd level cards, and a stack of 3rd level cards. Then you flip over 5 cards from each stack to make this kind of open pool of demons to choose from as the game progresses. This does start to take up a bit of room, so bear with me here because my table is incredibly small, but you'll do this for all 3 piles. Then go ahead and grab one of these placemats. Every single player gets one, and we'll get more into what they do later. Once you have all of those, you're also going to set aside all of these little colored tokens that represent like sort of spell energy, sort of mana, and you're going to divide them into piles based off of color and set them aside. Once you've done that, go ahead and look at your playmat and you'll notice that there's a bunch of slots for your skeletal minions. They come with these cardboard standees, so you're going to want to choose a color that you like, assemble the standee, and then set it on the designated circle on your playmat. Next, you'll pull up these square tokens, which represent your infernal pacts in 2 different levels. Now, all of the tokens on the backside will say where they go. You just want to match up the symbol and the number to a slot on your placemat, and then set them all down accordingly. And every player is going to do this, because this will be what we use later in order to progress the game and level up your powers as a necromancer. Next, you're going to set aside a whole pile of these blasphemy tokens, which are your victory points for the game. And then we're going to set up the Nexus Infernum by rolling these 2 4-sided dice to determine what kind of arcane energy starts in each of these portals. Basically, you're going to roll the dice, and for every color that comes up, pull 2 of the corresponding colored cardboard tokens and then place them on that circle. You're going to do this for every single portal, which means that you're going to do it 6 times to determine what the starting state of the board is. Now, this energy replenishes every turn, so at the start of every player's turn, they're going to roll those 2 4-sided dice again, as well as a 6-sided die to determine what energy shows up and at what portal, using the symbols corresponding to the board. Once you've replenished the arcane energy at the start of your turn, you have a bunch of different options for what you can do. The first option is to summon a skeleton to the Nexus, and you do this by rolling the portal die as well as a 6-sided die. Now take the number that you rolled and compare it to the skeletal minions section of your placemat, And you need to roll above a certain number depending on how many skeletons you already have out on the board. Since this is our first turn, we don't have any skeletons out yet, so as long as we roll a 1 or above, we can place that skeleton on the section that was indicated by the portal die. But later on, as we have more and more skeletons out, it's going to be harder and harder to summon. The second option on your turn is to command one of your skeletons to move to a new portal, which is pretty simple, but this also helps you set yourself up to aggress other players' minions, which is basically just a fancy way of saying you attack them. Now, in order to do this, you move into a portal that has enemy minions on it, and then you roll a 6-sided die for every skeleton you have on that section. So if you have 2, you roll 2 dice. For this demo, I'll just stick to 1 though. And as soon as you roll your 6-sided die, your enemy's going to respond by rolling a 4-sided die for every skeleton that they have in that section. Then each player chooses the dice with the highest end number, and if that number is above a 4, then that player gets to remove one of their opponent's skeletons from the board, and they get a blasphemy point in return. So it can be pretty helpful to be kind of aggressive in this game. Another option is to siphon magical energy from the portals that you have skeletons on. For each skeleton on a portal of your choice, you get to roll a 4-sided die, and for the highest number that comes up, you get to pull that many arcane energy tokens off of the portal and keep it in your reserve for later. Now you'll notice that this purple energy doesn't naturally spawn, and that's because you could trade 3 of any other energy that you have in your reserve for 1 of these purple ones, which act as a wild card for later. Now you need this energy in order to summon demons, which is what these cards are for down at the bottom. These cards each show a type of demon, as well as what energy is needed to summon them with. So for example, that one needed 1 green and 1 black. This one up here needs 1 black and 1 red. We don't actually have a black one, but we do have the purple wild card that we can trade in exchange, and then we get this demon on our side. Our goal is to summon demons in pairs, so we want 2 that have the same symbol at the bottom at the same level of power. So 2 level 1 demons with this little scythe and axe icon. Once we have those, we can unlock our scythe and axe first level ability, which will give us a bonus for the rest of the game. In this case, a bonus to our aggression. And we also get some blasphemy points for it, which is fun. Now this third tier of demons are known as your demonic patrons, and you can only have 1 at a time when you summon them, but they give you a static bonus to your blasphemy points, as well as abilities that you can use throughout the rest of the game, so they're pretty powerful and definitely worth having. The first person to reach a certain number of blasphemy points gets to win and call themselves the ultimate necromancer and the conqueror of the Nexus. So again, it's a pretty fun game. I just personally prefer the other game from this studio, which is called Eschaton, and I'll cover that in a different video. Next up is Belladiction, which is a bit newer to the scene and honestly one of my new favorite games to show people. It's a combination of wargaming and miniatures, as well as the playstyle of Magic the Gathering, but like so much easier to learn than it looks. It seems intimidating, but I promise it's so easy. I also got to visit these guys over at PAX Unplugged and take a look at their full miniatures and train pieces, and they also told me about some really cool stuff coming up, but unfortunately, I lost all the footage of that. Like I had a whole interview and iCloud just ate it, so instead I'll link their site down below because I believe they've made the announcement, so go check it out there. You're gonna want to set aside a flat surface, a table, or something like that to play on, and depending on what sort of game and what sort of, skirmish you want to run, that will determine how big you need your space to be. For demonstration purposes, I only have like a teeny table, so I'm just gonna set aside like a little bit of space, maybe a foot on each side. No game is this small though. You're gonna have a lot more space when you actually run it. Once you've laid out your arena, every player is gonna choose a corner of the battlefield to deploy their armies from. Now, every single box also comes with options for seekers, which are kind of like the leaders of your armies. I went ahead and chose Vorendal, and each seeker also has something known as a legacy card that comes with them that kind of empowers their abilities. We'll get more into that later. You'll also get a terrain card that says what happens when people step on your terrain across the battlefield. Each box also comes with a bunch of accessories like a measuring stick that goes inch by inch, a d20, which I totally didn't drop here. I don't know what you're talking about. We'll just set that aside for now. Damage tokens, which come in 1s and 5s. You'll just want to put those aside in little piles. A rounds tracker, which keeps track of what round of battle you're on. And a longer tracker that tracks Echo and Mastery. Echo is determined by your legacy card, so we start with 25 for Vorendal. And then Mastery is going to be your victory points, which we aren't going to start with any, so that's going to be at 0 for now. Then you have your deck, which is full of the creatures that you summon and spells you can cast. Their rarities are determined by the colors in the upper left corner. The red one is basic, the silver one is elite, and then any gold ones are unique. I'm working with a basic starter deck for now, but there are rules for creating your own deck and deck building. That just goes beyond the scope of this video, so. It is kind of like Commander in Magic though, where in order to have a card in your deck, you do need to have it match at least one of the symbols on the Seeker that you're running. But anyway, go ahead and shuffle up that that deck and set it aside on your side of the battlefield. Next, you have your 15 relic cards, which are the goal of the battle, to get as many of these as possible. And you're gonna just shuffle that, set it off to the side within reach, and then flip 2 over to act as a pool to draw from. Each faction also comes with its own terrain, and you guys are gonna take turns placing the terrain on the battlefield in a way that is kind of away from each other and also from the deployment area. You usually have like 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 different sections of terrain that you can put down, but I'm just gonna use 2 for the sake of the fact that I don't have that much room here. Again, looking at different types of battles will give you different recommendations for layouts and how much terrain you can put down. Either way, they're really fun because you can also get them 3D printed. So now you're gonna put down husks, and for this type of battle, I'm gonna put down 4. These are just cardboard standees that represent the old owners of the relics that you're going to fight for. Again, these have to be away from the deployment areas and from each other, and there's rules for it. That's really specific, so I'm not gonna get into it here. I've also gone ahead and set up our enemy, which is Auric, and so I put his deck, his legacy card, his seeker card, and all that fun stuff aside. Again, you're gonna wanna make sure you shuffle these decks before you get started. Now, he has a different starting echo because he is a different seeker. Again, you're gonna wanna look at his legacy card to see what he begins with, and then put that on this dial. Now, everyone is gonna start by drawing 7 cards, which will be their starting hand, and we're gonna look at the anatomy of a card a little bit closely. This is Dead at Arms. Its casting cost is 3, it's got its name, its type, and then also its unit and sub-unit types. Kinda like magic cards, the different unit types only come into play when they're referenced by other spells or abilities. And Dead at Arms also has 2 different abilities listed under his unit, as well as a bunch of numbers on the left side, and we'll get into what those mean later on, but there's also a cute little flavor text quote at the bottom. These cards are great. I absolutely love these, and they all stand for different units that you can cast in battle. You do also have spells. There are 2 different kinds. One is called the channel spell. You can do one of these during each of your turns, but only on your actual turn, so it's kind of like a sorcery in Magic. And then there's also swift spells, which are like instants, and you can cast these at any time. Again, what they do is just listed on the card, so you can just read it to figure out what it does. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now, whoever goes first gets this little initiative token, and how you determine who goes first is described in the actual booklet. I'm not going to describe it here, but here's an important note about terrain before we get into the actual game. These cardboard versions are 2-sided. The yellow zones are low barriers that you can see and shoot through, but you can't move through, and then the red ones are high barriers that you can neither see or move through. Again, when you step on this terrain, it does have certain effects, which are described on the terrain card that your army has. So be sure to keep that on you and keep a good eye out for when someone steps on your turf. And now we'll get to the first turn. So I'm gonna go ahead and deploy my Stitched Corpse, and I do have a cardboard standee for this, but what's more fun is the miniatures, which are amazing in this game. So you can definitely tell this is why I bought the game, is I'm a sucker for just amazing miniatures. Do I paint them? Absolutely not. Stop asking questions. I just like having them. So we're gonna put these 2 guys out, and the amount of echo that it costs to summon them is gonna be totaled up and removed from our pool. So with 9 plus 2, that's a total of 11 echo. And you don't wanna use it all at once. Some of it does replenish turn over turn, but not all of it. So do be careful. Then we're gonna put these guys in our corner of the battlefield, our deployment zone, and then we'll pass to our opponent, who's gonna do the same thing. They're gonna choose their starting units, put them in their deployment corner. And this deck also has item cards, which you can deploy at the same time by, again, spending echo and then attaching it to a unit of your choice to give it a little bit of an extra buff. Next, we're gonna take turns going and doing our action phase, which is where we take 1 unit at a time, turn them 90 degrees to show that they're expended, and then we get 2 AP, 2 action points to work with. First up is movement. If you look at a creature's card, this foot icon shows how many inches across the battlefield it can move. In this case, we're going to move this guy 3 inches using the given ruler. You can also attack as long as there's an enemy within 1 inch of your unit. You can make a melee attack by rolling a die and then adding the number next to the little sword icon on its card. In this case, that's going to be a total of 13. We're then going to compare that to the defending unit's shield icon, which is 12. So in this case, we win the fight, and then that enemy takes damage equal to the larger number here by the attack icon. So in this case, it's going to be 2, which means we'll take 2 of these damage indicators and place them on the card for the enemy unit. There are also ranged attacks. Now the card will say whether or not someone has one. The Stitched Corpse doesn't, because there's a 0 next to this archer icon, but this Deadeye Archer has a range of 8, which means as long as an enemy unit is 8 or less inches away from it, it can make an attack at range. And this is where terrain and stuff like that comes into play, so watch out for that. Once you've activated one of your units, you're going to go ahead and pass to the other player, and it's going to be their turn to do the same, spending 2 AP if they want to, or passing if they don't want to. And then you go back and forth until both sides have expended all of their units for that round. You do have to activate all your units, but you don't have to spend all your AP. Now let's say the enemy keeps attacking my Stitched Corpse and eventually causes it so much damage that it overcomes its health, which is 8 as indicated on its card. Which means I'll take the card, discard it, I'll put the standee off to the side, and then because that Stitched Corpse was worth 2 echo, my enemy gains 2 mastery victory points and is on its way to victory. Now, if you really want to get on your way to victory, you want to capture these. These are husks, which hold relics, which are the real goals of the game. And as long as you're near them and fulfill a couple different requirements, then you can lay claim to them and gain a powerful artifact that you can attach to one of your creatures for the rest of the battle, as well as gain a handful of victory points. It's real simple. Just take the card and put it underneath the unit you're attaching it to and remove the husk from the battlefield, then flip over a new relic card to replenish the pool. If you don't like either of the relics that are available for you to choose from, you can actually pull from the top of the relic deck, but you just won't know what it is until you flip it over, and then you're stuck with it, so be careful there. But every relic does give you 10 mastery points. Just be careful, because if that unit that has it dies, then someone else can come pick it up off your corpse, which is now a new husk. Once you've activated all your units, and your opponent has as well, you move to the next round, where you gain 2 times the round number of echo points. So if we're on round 2 times that means you gain 4 new echo points to use this round. So it starts off slow, but the longer you play, the more quickly you gain your abilities back and can cast even more stuff. And at the beginning of each round, you also gain 2 more cards from the top of your deck to play with. Don't forget, you also have a legacy ability. We didn't go into this too much because it's more for players who have played at least one game, but it gives you powerful abilities. And after you play the game a little bit, you can build your own armies and decks of spells for some pretty powerful effects. Now that's the gist of it for today. I have so many games, like, again, an obscene amount, an unbelievable amount of games lying around, so I'm guaranteed there's gonna be more parts to this. If you guys have recommendations for games that you like, let me know, and also for video themes that I could do down the road. So for example, I know I have coming up a video talking about games that use play mats that you might not have heard of. In the past, I've talked about games that are really good for like traveling or camping or anything like that, or I could talk about just like 2-player games, you know, whatever you guys wanna see. Let me know. I definitely want to do more horror stuff specifically and more playmat games. So if you guys have ideas, if you guys have games that fit into any category in particular, whatever you want, throw it at me. I got a camera and nothing to lose. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. By the way, all the proceeds of this video go towards new shelves. Genuinely, I can't move. I looked into it. This housing situation here is abysmal. So it's throwing up shelves infinitely and hoping that they hold up in the drywall. So that's what the proceeds here go to. Also, don't forget to check out the merch. There's a bunch of new merch. I've been working hard, which I never do. So go check it out. Bye for real.